Today we're going to learn about mastery learning. Today in a typical classroom, if a student were to receive an assessment on a subject, for example, math, assuming that that test accurately gauged how well they understood the learning that had taken place, that student may receive, let's say, 75% on that test. A 75% is a passing grade, and more than likely the teacher would not have the time to reteach to a student who did, we'll be fair, understand much of the material that was taught. However, that student still has 25% of the material that they were not able to demonstrate their understanding of. That same student would then be given more material to learn on top of the old material. So let's still assume that 75% in the first content area. But this new material most often builds upon the old material. And perhaps of this new material, half of it can stand on its own and the student can understand. But the other half the student can't understand because they directly require knowledge that the student did not gain in that initial 25%. So now the student is missing 3/8 of the knowledge they should have, or approximately 37.5% of the learning. So you can see just by adding one unit, the student has gone from 25% that is unknown to 37.5% that is unknown. As you can imagine, as time goes on, the gaps only get wider. Instead, with mastery learning, we'll start with the same scenario. The same student is given the same test that we assume is the same level of accurate in demonstrating that student's knowledge of the content area. Instead of saying 75%, that's good enough, you would focus on that 25% because 75% is their mastery level, so they have 75% mastery on that particular subject that they're learning. So you take that 25% that has not yet been mastered, and that's what you focus on. You reteach, you learn it over and over again in the same ways, maybe you learn it in new ways. Once that student feels confident to try again, the student is given a similar test. Obviously, it would not be beneficial to give the exact same test, but you still want to make sure you're hitting on the same content areas and not adding any new information. So let's say that student worked very, very hard and they were able to master half of the information they could not get before. They still have approximately 12.5% that has not been mastered. So again, that 12.5% would be focused on and retaught. And again, once the student felt confident to go on, they could retest. And let's say this time the student worked really hard again, and this time they received their test back and they learned they got a 100% on it. Or you could say that that student has attained mastery in that particular area. Now that the student has actually attained mastery in the area, it would be appropriate for that student to move on. If you remember our friend originally, who tried to move on before attaining mastery, they found themselves with some pretty big gaps in their learning, which we also saw would continue to widen as they go. Instead, this second friend was able to attain mastery, and as a result of that, they were able to understand much more. Now, of course, there will still always be moments where there are gaps or certain students need to be retaught, but you just continue the cycle. So in this case, the student would just work on that last 1/8 of the knowledge that they don't have. They would be retested, And eventually, through hard work, that student would find themselves able to attain 100% mastery. One of the benefits of using videos, such as the Khan Academy, or such as the video you're viewing today, is that students can work at their own pace. When students are able to work at their own pace, they're able to determine whether they have attained mastery before moving on, and if they haven't, they're able to relearn concepts and view them in new ways.